President Buhari charges officers and men of the Nigeria Police Force to uphold public trust by maintaining professionalism in discharging their responsibilities.
You must always remember that Nigeria, and indeed Nigerians, have entrusted to you the assignment to protect their lives and properties.
National Economic Council Committee on Security and Community Policing recommends setting up funds on zonal basis to improve the country's security.
Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning presents components of the 2020 budget, assures of provision of critical infrastructure.
Achieving fiscal sustainability and macro fiscal objectives of the federal government will require bold, decisive, as well as very urgent action. Federal government is determined to act in this way as may be required.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we focus on Nigerians and the culture of volunteerism.
All right, Nigerians are voted as the happiest people on planet Earth. And as someone said, not just because we're getting more, or rather not because we're getting more, but because we are giving back much more. Now that takes me to the popular biblical injunction, and I quote, "Give and it will be given to you in double measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over." Now that enjoins Christians to practice the act of giving back, and I'm sure it also has a corollary in the Quran.
Well, there's no doubt about that, Claire, that the major religious faiths exhort their adherents not only to be selfless, but indeed to give back to society in order to improve the well-being of all.
So we are all compelled by our faith to render charity as a personal responsibility. And in fact, the motivational writer Randy Lewis wrote that there'll be no greatness without goodness, and went on, of course, to initiate charity services, which is said to have sparked up voluntary charity services in the different parts of the world. But the question is, how do you give back to the society?
Well, giving back to society can come in diverse ways, one of which is volunteerism. And of course, the concept is ancient in origin, yet it's yet to be, as it were, deeply entrenched amongst us Nigerians for reasons which, of course, are not unrelated to lack of awareness, personal disposition, or other societal pressures.
So, what is volunteerism? And a simple definition would be time, talent, or services that one renders for charity, educational, or other worthwhile activities, especially in one's own community. But the United Nations describes it as a powerful tool to engage people in addressing developmental issues.
And usually, a volunteer is passionate about service to the community. And of course, the United Nations Volunteer Program observes that people the world over engage in volunteerism for a variety of reasons, most of which, of course, include helping in the elimination of poverty, improving basic health facilities as well as education, and also for environmental purposes, plus reduction of risks or disasters and many more other developmental matters.
Indeed, and in all of these fields, volunteerism makes its specific contribution by generating well-being for people and their communities. Now, the United Nations Volunteer Program goes further to state that the attainment of the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, that's SDGs, by 2030 is almost impossible without people offering free services in support of it.
Now, individual volunteerism is particularly critical in times of disasters, as well as, of course, in everyday lives where you are confronted with persons who are physically challenged or otherwise have some other disability that would not enable them to function properly unless they are assisted. Now, you also find situations where persons have to get out of their vehicles and help in traffic control at moments where there is a gridlock. You'll find out in terms also of lawyers who offer what is referred to as pro bono services. That's to say, free legal services. Plus, situations involving medicine, medical practitioners also render services without charging their clients. So these are some of the ways that individuals do key into the acts of volunteerism.
And indeed, Kingsley, development experts say it is also important for more Nigerians to embrace the culture of volunteerism as an act of service to, mankind. Now, everyone can volunteer something, of course, like we said earlier on, time, energy, money, skills, and many other, resources. So the question is, have you ever volunteered your service for national or community development? If you haven't, the time is now. That's why on Good Morning Nigeria today, we turn our attention to Nigeria and the culture of volunteerism. I am Claire Adelabu Abdul Razak.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague to also welcome you to the program, broadcast live as always on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We are live here in our Abuja headquarters studios. In the course of the program, we have our regular complimentary segments, and these include newspaper review, business, and others. In the meantime, let's take the highlights of the morning news, and here is Musbah Don Wahab.
Hello, welcome to the news this morning. President Muhammadu Buhari has described the Nigeria Police as a critical pillar of the nation's domestic security agenda. It's therefore tasking officers and men of the force to at all times uphold public trust by maintaining professionalism in discharging their responsibilities. The president was speaking at Wudil, Kano State during the passing out ceremony of the second regular course cadets of the Nigeria Police Academy.
As you attain this milestone, I implore you to operate professionally, gallantly, and courageously as we continue to make Nigeria a safe and secure country for all law-abiding citizens. You must always remember that Nigeria, and indeed Nigerians, have entrusted to you the assignment to protect their lives and properties. This trust must be taken very seriously while upholding the principle of civil policing, leveraging national and international best practice.
Still on security, states have been advised to set up funds on zonal basis to further improve the security situation in the country. This is one of the recommendations made by the National Economic Council Committee for Security and Community Policing, headed by Governor Kayode Fayemi of Ekiti State.
The committee reported and have begun to identify potential road projects and road infrastructure and also other infrastructure in the power sector, in the rail sector that can be used for can be funded through this mechanism.
For the excess crude account, as at 19th of November 2019, we have a balance of $324,963 and 72 cents. In the stabilization account, we have a balance of 30,479,704,808 naira.
More on financial matters. Nigeria plans to spend 10.594 trillion naira in 2020. The expenditure framework for the new budget year captures the new minimum wage as approved by President Muhammadu Buhari in April and will focus on provision of critical infrastructure. Presenting the components of the budget, Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, said capital releases for 2019 have closed with 1.212 trillion naira so far released.
I've seen in the papers, people saying from 1st of January that without TIN number, you will not operate your account. It doesn't work like that. That is when we have to engage the commercial banks. The FRS will engage the commercial banks and work out a modality of how this will be implemented. And normally, there will be information that is given to citizens.
We cannot promote tourism without infrastructure. And you can see that the lion's share of this year's capital expenditure is actually Ministry of Works and then Power. And these are the areas where we need to invest if we want tourism.
Meanwhile, the Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmed, has announced that the new minimum wage with consequential adjustment will take effect from December 2019. The minister, while fielding questions on the federal government's 2020 budget of sustaining growth and job creation, affirmed that the increase is captured in the 10.594 trillion naira expenditure plan of the government.
I want to confirm to you that we have made adequate provision in the budget for payment of minimum wage, and we are also planning in December to pay for the consequential arrears of the consequential adjustments.
Away from financial matters, former Attorney General of the Federation, Mohammed Adoke, has returned to the country to face charges of alleged money laundering. Adoke arrived at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, on Thursday afternoon, accompanied by the officials of the International Police Interpol, who handed him over to Nigeria security operatives. A federal high court in Abuja had in April 2019 issued a warrant of arrest against Mohammed Adoke, former petroleum minister Dan Etete, and any oil company executive Roberto Kasula for the alleged involvement in the Malabo oil deal. The oil deal, which involves OPL 245, a lucrative oil block located in offshore Nigerian waters, allegedly led to $1.1 billion changing hands in the deal. Meanwhile, EFCC spokesman Wilson Ewujeren confirmed to NTA News that the former Attorney General and Minister of Justice of the Federation, Mohammed Adoke, is in their custody. The Ministry of Information and Culture will assist the NTA in pursuing its aspiration of having all its studios nationwide fully digitized. The minister, Lai Mohammed, said this while handing over new digital state-of-the-art broadcast equipment to NTA zonal directors and general managers in Abuja.
I am very proud that the NTA has actually walked the talk. They have demonstrated that Executive Order number 5 is beneficial to the country, not only in terms of making us self-sufficient, but also in terms of building capacity and creating more jobs.
Been sensitized, they know the value of this equipment, and they are ready and raring to go. So there's no problem at all. No fear of any damage, no fear of lack of maintenance, nothing of that nature.
And the federal government has declared Wednesday 25th and Thursday 26th December 2019, as well as Wednesday 1st January 2020 as public holidays to mark the Christmas, Boxing Day and the New Year celebrations. The Minister of Interior, Rauf Aregbesola, who made a declaration on behalf of the federal government, felicitated with Christians and all Nigerians both at home and abroad on this year's Christmas and New Year celebrations. He enjoined all Christians to live within the virtues and teachings of Jesus Christ, and hinged on compassion, patience, peace, humility, righteousness, and love for one another, adding that doing so would guarantee an atmosphere of peace and security in the country. The minister wishes Nigerians a happy and peaceful Christmas and New Year celebrations. Are you always giving and not taking? That spirit of volunteerism on the table for discussion. Join Claire and Kingsley after the break. Good morning.
20 years of travel and counting. 20 years of promoting tourism in Africa and diaspora. Over 3 million kilometers traveled. Over 30 African countries visited. Explored the diaspora in 4 continents. Connected over 100,000 happy tourists to Africa. Reached over 50 million homes. igniting smiles across Africa and beyond. As Gogi Africa turns 20, we thank you and invite you to join us in the quest for 20 must-visit destinations in partnership with the largest TV network in Africa, the NTA, Ministry of Information and Culture, Ministry of Transportation, Lagos State Government, Canon, Delta Airlines, Royal Caribbean, Tour Brokers International. You too can still be a partner. Call the numbers on your screen or info@gogeafrica.tv. Goge Africa, celebrating 2 decades of heritage, travel and tourism.
Not so fast. Look, I'm tired. I want to check out of this country for greener pastures.
Just calm down for a moment. Please sit down.
Do you have a job where you're going to? No, but someone is arranging,
Listen, Alinko. Checking out of this country without proper planning means one thing. Unimaginable begin. You know, I've been in the diaspora, but legitimately doing great things at home and abroad. As I've been saying, without the proper footing abroad, the risk is not worth it. Listen, Alinko, it's better to be home than be trapped abroad, or even end up in prison.
In Nigeria, there is one sound we need to silence. So let's silence toothache before it starts with Oral-B All-Round Protection. Its advanced technology helps prevent both tooth holes and gum problems that can lead to tooth loss. It strengthens your teeth, giving them all-round protection. Because the only sound we really want to hear is that of our future. For healthier, stronger teeth in 1 week.
You can choose to do this with your stew, but not your data. Get more out of life with the new Airtel data plans. Dial *141# today. Data is life.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
My name's Mr. Muftau Abiodun Balogun. We started this business 4 years ago, and this is the production outlet where we do about 4,000 to 5,000 birds per day. With the closure of the border recently, we've been experiencing massive surge in demand. Our sales per day now is going to between 15 to 20,000 birds. We needed to expand all avenues because of the multiplier effect it's creating. And the most interesting thing about this closure is that many of my farmers today are farmers we recruited recently, and they are young graduates. What the government is doing will lead us right. And I can tell you, if the government sustains this thing, sky will not even be our limit.
All right, you're welcome back, and still Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Time for us to take some business stories, and here is our correspondent, Kunle Adeyeye.
The National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development says it has initiated a contextual processing protocol to harness medicinal potential of natural agricultural resources in the 36 states and the FCT. The project will let Nigeria source for between 5 to 10,000 pharmaceutical plants within the country rather than depend on importation. It also emphasized that It is articulating strategy to manufacture active pharmaceutical ingredients using hydrocarbon byproducts in the country to reduce import dependency and make the industry viable.
Using our contextual processing protocol, these people in the hinterlands of Nigeria can now start to harness these local resources and ensure that these resources are processed to the stage where high quality finished products can either be presented in the Nigerian market or to be ready for export.
In another development, the adoption of electronic channels for financial transactions has earned 10 deposit money banks about 135.15 billion naira in revenue in the first 9 months of the year ended September 30. It was generated from fees and commissions that the banks charged customers when they carried out transactions through automated teller machines, USSD, internet banking, and point-of-sale payments. And next are the details of Thursday's tradings on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. With business news, I'm Kunle Adeyeye.
All right, that was the business news. Coming up next is newspaper review. Stay with us.
Our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atoyebe, is right here with us in the studios. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kisili. Good morning. Good morning, Claire.
Bye.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Right, let's begin with leadership this morning. And leadership has on its front page 2019 budget. It says FG records its 1% performance. It comes with the rider to spend 2.3 billion naira on ex-presidents, heads of state in 2020. The details of that on page 4. And the picture story is the picture story there. The picture story of President Muhammad Buhari and the Inspector General of Police, Mohammed Adamu, decorating a graduating officer, that's of course during the convocation ceremony and passing out parade of second regular cadets of the Nigerian Police Academy Wudil in Kano State. That happened yesterday. Trending at the foot of the paper, NJC recommends appointment of 33 judges and others. It's on page 12. NAF destroys another terrorist camp in Bakare community. That's on page 2. Let me take you quickly just a little below the nameplates. There are stories trending just by the earpiece. FG states to borrow 2 trillion naira from pension fund. Find out more about that on page 6. EFCC picks up Adoke on return to Nigeria. And Yuletide, rice farmers working to meet demand. And of course, we have a foreign story there, inside politics of U.S. impeachment. That's the outlook of the leadership.
All right, we'll take a look also at the Daily Sun newspaper. An earpiece there is on the EFCC arresting Adoke, ex-Justice Minister, on return from Dubai. And you have a number of riders to that headline to grill him over Malabu oil scam. Interpol, why we arrested him. And lastly, as a rider, I've not been briefed about his return. That's attributed to the incumbent Attorney General of the Federation, Malame. Details of those stories on page 6. Now, the lead story, you have another headline there. This is not just the lead story yet. Below the nameplate, it says, no going back on social media regulation, vows federal government. Details on page 12. And on page 2, for the lead story, trouble brews for 22 former governors and senators. We are probing them for money laundering. That's according to the rider by the Attorney General of the Federation. And then below the photographs that you see there of the former Justice Minister upon his arrival at the Abuja airport yesterday, JAMB generates 20 billion naira in 3 years and to monitor CBT centers with drones. Details on page 10. I've received requests to dethrone Emir Sanusi. That's according to Ganduje, governor of Kano. Details on page 42. Federal government to pay workers consequential adjustments arrears this month. And governors fault consequential increment, but say 30,000 naira minimum wage not negotiable. That's on page 10. And lastly, gunmen abduct district head and 4 others in Kaduna. That's page 5.
Well, let's start with the budget. With the signing of the 2020 budget, the Minister for Finance, Budget and National Planning and the Minister of State counterpart did some briefing about 2019 budget as well as the forward-looking for 2020. Minister Zainab Ahmed says that on the area of revenue by the third quarter of 2014, aggregate revenue was about 4.25 trillion. And this came from oil, which was 52%, company income tax, which was 18%, value-added tax was 69%, custom collection was 184.10 billion, which is 114%. They actually exceeded their target. Revenue amounted to 81%. Consequently, the area of expenditure, the ministry says they are all up to date with personal and debt services releases. 8 months of overheads were released to ministries, departments, and agencies. On the area of capital, 1.2 trillion was representing 50% of the capital estimates for 2019 were released. 50% capital release and 50% performance has now shown that the budget 2019 was a 6 months budget. But there is also the outlook for 2020. The Minister of State, Minister of State also gave his own part of the briefing, saying that government will soon go to the debt market to source finance for the deficit component of the 2020 budget. Prince Agba added that infrastructure borrowing are to be paid directly to the contractors as they do their job. Minister of Finance Zainab Ahmed said government is concerned about population growth in relation to gross domestic product. And they said until the rate is reversed, where GDP is higher than the population growth, many Nigerians will not feel the impact of what is going on in the economy. Also, there is the concern that has been raised by the National Economic Summit that there is need to borrow about 2 trillion from the pension fund. This borrowing, the pension fund is said to have in an asset about 9 trillion in its coffers. And this is part of the brief from the National Economic Summit provided by the governor of Kebbi State. And he says the law permits 20% of pension funds to be borrowed for infrastructure. And not only that, this will enable the fund to earn a lot of long-term returns. 2019 budget had a provision of 169 billion for roads, and they were found to be grossly inadequate. There were briefs also from Minister of Finance about the statutory accounts. SS crude account, $324.96 million. Stabilization fund, as at December 17, was about 30.479 naira, while National Resource Fund stood at 88.28 billion naira. It's commendable because statutory positions of finances are now put in the public domain, and that's a critical commitment to transparency. The other area is the issue of minimum wage. The Governors Forum also held their meeting, and state governors have accepted to pay 30,000 minimum wage. Therefore, Labour can now sheath their swords. Governor Kayode Fayemi announced this, and he also clarified that negotiations have started with all the states of the Federation. He also explained that states are to benefit from a World Bank-assisted fiscal transaction accountability and sustainable grant, and that will be in March 2020. And they are also looking forward to a UK-Africa Investment Summit that is supposed to be hosted by the British Prime Minister. It's an opportunity for investment in Nigeria.
You know, the other story that's of interest to Bayo is the one about JAMB, you know, monitoring exams.
3 billion?
Using drones to monitor.
Well, that is...
In case that you read that.
Yeah, it's on the front page of the Daily Sun. So that's a rider to the headline, says to monitor CBT centers with drones.
Okay, that's good. But my area of interest is the quantum of revenue generated by JAMB in 3 years. JAMB, we must emphasize, is not a revenue generation entity.
I was wondering, I was going to ask you if I...
Yes. The simple deduction from that is that JAMB gets its revenue from payments by students to register for the Joint Matriculation Board. So it points to the fact that students are being overcharged, and that is becoming a revenue for JAMB that is not a revenue generation agency. Granted that government provides resources for JAMB to operate, but when you have your returns of this magnitude, it means that students who are majoritarily poor, and government's intention is to make access to education a lot more easier and cheaper, then it means that something has to be done about the rate they are charging for JAMB.
All right, Bayo, that's very well said. I mean, it's for JAMB to revise its fees downwards. Otherwise, you recall a couple of years ago, there were all kinds of stories of snakes swallowing money in the safe of JAMB, and and all kinds of bogus excuses that their officials gave. There is a story inside page of The Sun. The story has been trending for a while. I tried to look for it on the front page as a headline. It's not there. It's on the Kogi governor dissolving his executive council and appointing new aides and redeploying others. Sometimes one has some challenge understanding just how subnational entities function. Now, the governor's first term is coming to a close in about 6 weeks. So he's already dissolved his executive council ahead of that time. So is he going to run the remainder of his tenure without an executive council? And that, well, of course, there's a report here. Part of the report here says that he's redeployed the commissioners of finance, local government, then appointed, or retained some other persons. What about the other members, who had portfolios in the executive council? I think it's a very...
I think the Kogi current term is extending up to about February.
Yes.
Yeah. So what happens? Will they have their term terminated and renewed, or another set of executive will be commissioners? And
but this is not new. We've had state executives who stayed without even their...
It's also stayed for a long time.
It's unconstitutional.
Yes.
It's unconstitutional. If you recall, in 1981, Balarabe Musa, who was then governor of Kaduna State, was impeached because he had no executive council. The constitution mandates that you should have an executive council. You are not supposed to be a sole administrator.
Yes,
it's mandatory. It's a mandatory provision. It is not a discretionary provision.
The impeachment of Balarabe Musa was not solely because he didn't have commissioners. One of the factors was that there was then, at the then Kaduna State, there were, I think, 34 local governments. And he had a project that is industry, one for each local government area. And the Kaduna State House of Assembly felt that it was not without their consent. And that was one of the greater grouses for which he was impeached.
I know state executives.
He later on was justified because subsequently, when Kaduna State was subdivided into Katsina and Kaduna State, those industries were the only nuclear industries the states then had. The other interesting story here is from Bongom Jos, the Da Jacob Buba. He says that desperate politicians and some elders are responsible for crisis in the plateau. And he says that he was lamenting that politicians have not helped the peaceful coexistence over the plateau and in the country. He says politicians on the plateau and under the banner of religion and ethnicity instigate crisis. He was speaking at the youth summit, and he said that elders that always say youth are the leaders of tomorrow is the same elders who destroy the future of the youth by indulging them in religious and ethnic crisis. And he had a message for all. He said, look, in the past, we shared food and almost everything with Muslims during Christmas. Muslims visited us, and during Salah, we visited Muslims. I benefited from Muslims without them converting me to Islam. He advised that strictly, preachers should restrict their preaching to the Bible and the Quran. And anybody who preaches outside that should be stopped because they are the ones causing the crisis.
All right, let's quickly take a look at the editorial, which is taken from Daily Trust. and it's basically focusing on Gombe State's new policy, which is captioned 3G, or simply Gombe goes green, killing two birds with one stone. And basically by this editorial, it's a kind of encouragement, to the Gombe State government to, go on implementing this policy, which of course will address environmental challenges and also provide direct jobs to thousands of people across the state.
Well, Gombe has a challenge. It's a young state, and the editorial has happened that Gombe has now grown from a big village, that is Gombe town, to a modern developing city. However, the state itself have always had the challenges, environmental challenges, which are gully erosion and also deforestation. Particularly that the Desert 2 is advancing. And so they have these two programs. One is a program they call 3G, and the other is the program they call YESO. YESO is Youth and Social Support Operation. And the youths that are to be engaged in tree planting, and he has set a target of planting millions of trees, and this will be sustainable. And therefore, the governor's intent is to kill two birds with one stone. By providing employment. Those who are in the YESO will be paid 7,500 naira as stipend, while at the same time will succeed in redressing the challenges of desertification and providing a green environment that will make Gombe green and also peaceful. You recall several years back, during the military regime, it was always an annual ritual of tree planting. But because it was not sustained, the advancement of the desert inwards into Nigeria was only succeeded in being reduced in a few meters. But if the program is taken seriously, it has the opportunity of providing a very green environment that will even save us from the greenhouse effect, ultraviolet ray.
We wish Gombe all the best of luck.
Yeah, but I think we need to make a correction. We just goofed now. What we just discussed is a personal opinion piece and not the editorial of the Daily Trust. The issue, of course, is noted by Atoyebi. I'm sure the issue is noted. We'd like to thank you.
Thank you, too.
All right, we hope you enjoy your weekend. Okay, it's Good Morning Nigeria, still on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll get ahead with our item for discussion.
They swore an oath to serve our fatherland and defend the people. They traded their freedom, comfortable homes, and mortgaged their lives on the battleground for our unity and peaceful living. These are the great, fearless, loyal, and committed Nigerian armed forces who risked their lives courageously to safeguard our borders. But in the line of duty, many never returned. Nigerians, arise, let's celebrate our fallen heroes. Put on the remembrance emblem with pride to support the incapacitated and families of our fallen heroes.
It is indeed befitting to honor the memory of the gallant hearts of the men who paid the supreme sacrifice to keep the country united.
President Muhammadu Buhari enjoins all ministries, parastatals, religious and corporate bodies to donate generously to the Emblem Appeal Launch. Send your donations to these accounts. Account name, Emblem Appeal Launch. Account number 393-200-7526. EcoBank Nigeria PLC.
Breakfast your day, every day.
Nestle, good food, good life.
Hey, bro, what's up, man? Wait. Sure, son, I want the bicycle.
Enjoy more data than before on Airtel Home Broadband. Get up to 160 gigabytes on routers with 25,000 naira and 55 gigabytes on Airtel MiFi's with 12,000 naira. More data, more you. Reliable home broadband by
Airtel, the smartphone network.
the dreamer. Meet the stylish. Meet the bold. Meet the inquisitive. Meet the warrior. Meet the master. Meet the realist. The challenge is coming. Unity Challenge. Power, development, and peace. Coming soon.
All right, and just before we get into the discussion proper of Nigerians and volunteerism, let's listen to this background put together by our correspondent Victor Azu, of course, seeks the views of some Nigerians.
There are times like if you are called to community jobs, or like in your community you ask people for sanitation or something to clean the environment, you can as well go there, and it's a voluntary work. We do that most times in our estate as well. So that's the voluntary work, and I've done that repeatedly. If the society have impacted on you, so it's better to give little back to the society in one way or the other.
Somehow, people don't get so much involved in volunteerism because we're in a capitalist economy where everybody is looking for profit, looking for money. We are in a rat race. We are in an intense competition here. But I believe that the ultimate thing that touches the mind and gives you fulfillment is trying to do things that you know that the reward doesn't come from those who are benefiting.
I have a foundation, an education foundation, which I established and funded since 1989. Non-political, non-partisan, non-biased, just to assist the younger generations. I was opportune to be educated and elite among my community, so I have to give back to the community.
It is something that has to do with mentality. Not Nigerian alone, but blacks entirely. If you look at the way we behave, the way we do so many other things, we do it to get money, and it is not all about money at all. Money is good, but there are things that money cannot buy. So I think Nigeria should watch the developed countries, look at how they do their things, and copy from them.
All right, quite interesting viewpoints there. Thank you, Victor Azu, for compiling those. Now we have all our guests here in the studio with us, but let me begin to introduce them one by one. First, I have Engineer Adaji Usman, who is the State Coordinator, FRSC Special Marshal here in the FCT. Thank you very much for joining us.
It's nice being here.
I also have here Lillian Ugunwa Ike, who is the Chief Executive Officer and founder, Lillian Ike Foundation. Lillian, thank you very much for coming.
Yeah.
And Rotarian Abdullahi Idris, District Secretary, Rotary International District 9125.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
A pleasure.
Kingsley.
All right. We also have with us in the studios Nathan John. Nathan John is reputed to have donated blood 61 times. And by some account, that is a record for us in Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
Nathan, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Good morning, thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, let's just have, again, an understanding of what volunteerism is from your different perspectives before we get into why people decide to volunteer. Lillian, let's start with you. What, in your opinion, is volunteerism?
Yeah. Basically, volunteerism is just all about giving back to the society without expecting anything. Just simple definition of volunteerism.
Are we, Abdullahi, is there a conflation here of charity and volunteerism?
There is no confliction. Basically, you have charities that run based on should I say, set goals of such organizations. But for volunteerism itself, it's just about that time or resource you put in to ensure that charity moves. That is just how the two relate.
Nathan, you have broken a record in terms of voluntary blood donation. For you, what does that mean?
Thank you very much. It's giving back to the society and giving what nobody can pay for, especially when it comes to volunteerism work. You give it to the people that are in need, and these are the people that cannot pay you back.
Okay. Special Marshal.
Well, I think basically, when you volunteer to do, is an in-depth thing. It's a thing that comes from the mind without expectation whatsoever. Now, when you said you volunteer to, it means that you have made up your mind. No matter what happens, I have decided that I need to give to these people that are in need, or I need to go back to the society and make it better than I have made it. We're just having a discussion a short while ago, and we said, look, most times that is why we have a setback. Expectations are very high, and our expectations is all about money. As I'm going into this, what do I stand to gain? What will be accrued to me at the end of the day? And once you have that mindset, you are bound to fail. You are no longer giving. If there is one thing that Nigerians have so enjoyed better than most so-called advanced countries today, is the issue of volunteerism. Nigerians give with their heart. They give with their mind without expecting it. That's those who are committed to doing it. But probably in most of the advanced countries, you see that volunteers are paid stipends. They get little things from even volunteering to do one or two things as a part of encouragement. But here in this part of the country, we do it with our finances even, committing our money, our time, resources, and everything that we do have to ensure that that thing goes in well. So I think volunteerism in the sense of it is one thing that is really striving and driving Nigeria, in fact, holding Nigeria together as it stands today. Because
but you don't really volunteer what you don't have. So my question will be, is there a trigger? Is there a motivator? And I just like to again start from Lillian.
Like you said earlier, you must have passion before you go into volunteerism. It's not something you just wake up one morning and said you want to do. No. Most of us that do it, we do it because of what we have, like the passion. We are not doing it because of what we are expected to get. You just do it because this is what you want to do. So whether there is money or financial aspect of it, whatsoever that is attached in it, we don't even need it.
What's your personal motivation?
Like I said, the passion. Just the passion. I'm not doing it because of anything. No, I have the passion when seeing people in need. Even like volunteerism is not really about financial aspects. You volunteer in so many ways. You as an individual, look at your neighbor. What does she or he lack? You volunteer. Like community development, you mustn't need financial aspects to do it. So basically, it's the passion behind volunteerism.
I don't think from the responses that our guest gave earlier that I have some clarity as to whether or not certain kinds of dispositions will qualify as volunteerism. And that's why I want to go back again to Rotarian Abdullahi Idris. We talked about acts of charity and donations. Do those qualify necessarily as volunteer? I can sit in my house if I have the funds and say, okay, I'm making a donation of X millions of naira to a particular cause. That isn't volunteerism, is it?
Well,
so what therefore are the ingredients of volunteerism?
Well, as regards to that, volunteerism, just as we put on the acts of charity. Like for us in Rotary, for example, we have two driving visions. One being service above self, and the second, it profits those who serve best. How it is put is, you have four cardinal points in which you can actually volunteer, which should be 1, your talent, 2, your treasure, 3, you have your thinking and your treasure. That's talent, time, and thinking.
That's right.
You put that together, for example. You have those who can actually, just like you said, you just give your resource and you just stay and let it be. But how impactful will those resources be put to use? That is what makes the charities thrive. Thinking on how to make them profitable to those who should benefit from them is another. And at the end of the day, the smiles you get from the faces of those your resource get to in the long run is what gives you that inner satisfaction of what you don't see. For example, you have those who come out from various countries to come and do charity or voluntary services. A lot of them can be professionals. It could be doctors, medical professionals, even in technology and so on. And you go to communities where certain things are lacking, and you see them putting their skills to use in terms of either elevating or improving such communities, either by basic health, education, and so on and so forth. So that's how you can actually relate between your volunteerism and charity, because the charities are actually those, should I say, outfits, for example, that put those collective resources to bear where they are most needed.
Okay, let's return to Nathan, John. Some persons would argue that, as Abdullahi was saying, that in volunteerism, perhaps 2 of the most critical elements will be time and effort. Because time and effort. Now, time, you can relate that to the time value concept of money. Yeah, the time you are supposed to spend doing some other thing else that will earn you money. You say, no, this time I'm going to spend, doing this. And then the effort. The effort will arise from your skill, your intellect, and then your passion. What do you think?
I think time is very, very important. It's of the way you feel and the time you are putting for it to be a success. I want to take it from for me as a blood donor. Since 2005, I think I kick-start this. And it has been 4 times in a year I donate as a male donor. But I want to say that if I don't have that drive that somebody needs the blood, at least a pint, and whenever I walk into NBTS, which is the custodian of this blood bank, I see people coming to assess the blood. Those are the things that gives me, okay, what I'm doing, I think somebody is in need of it. And many times I go there, it's not that, in some countries like France, they will put a call to you that you are due to donate, or here in Nigeria, they will send text messages. But I walk in there without call or without reminder. As long as I have my card, the next appointment is on the card. So I know the next time I am to donate. Last week, Thursday, was the one that I gave 61 times. And I want to say that giving time to what somebody else wants is one of the things that, it called volunteerism. And when you donate, another person is in need of it. And making it as a time for me is that I have other work that I'm doing. I'm working. But when it comes to that time, I make sure that I'm there. So it gives me that heart of doing something to somebody else who is in need. Even though I don't know the person that is receiving the blood, but I know that the blood is getting to help somebody.
Okay, Engineer Adaji Usman, you are an engineer by profession.
Yeah.
And
Structural civil engineer.
Exactly, and you're also FRSC Special Marshal.
Yeah.
What was the motivating factor for you? Why did you volunteer, to be a Special Marshal for the FRSC?
Good. Now, in the first place, the man who is a blood donor, for instance, or the Rotarian, who of course would have invited some few agencies to come to Nigeria to do one or two things, wouldn't have been able to get from point A to point B at a needed time if you don't have a safer road. If the opportunity of him moving from one point to another is not there, he gets stranded. He gets hooked to a particular point, and the aim perhaps would have been defeated. For instance, if a call is put across to him and he needs to be in Gariki Hospital, somebody is dying, we need a pint of blood. And with what we used to have in the FCT here, the roads are blocked everywhere. The man will not he won't fly to that place. So in the first place, I lived in Cuba way back, as far back as about 13, 15, 16 years ago. And we came out one morning and discovered that attitudes of Nigerians were just something else, and everywhere is just locked up. And we said, no, this can't continue. The road safety, FRSC, the people regarded as road safety, that is the regulars, those in uniform, the number of personnel they have is not in any way equal to the number of vehicles or people or points we have in FCT here. So somebody needs to give an assistance. Somebody needs to assist, aid in ensuring that we are able to curb this menace. Because I see it as a menace, because when you have a problem and the problem keep recurring, and then every ability, every effort in trying to curb that becomes a problem, where people do things willingly, it becomes a menace, it becomes a thing a disease that we need to really cure. So we came out, joined this organization and say, how can we continue to assist? Don't forget, how did this FRSC Special Marshal started in the first place? It started with the like of Wole Soyinka then, way back in Ibadan, where as lecturers in the university, they discovered that accidents were happening on that road between Ibadan and Lagos every now and then. Very talented students dying on the roads and so on. I said, no, we can't sit down here and look at this. Let's come out and see how we can curb this. And they started. And gradually, sometimes in 1988, it became very pertinent that they should allow it to go in as an organization. And from the Special Marshal, we had the FRSC by the then President Babangida, sometime in 1988, and it became an act of the National Assembly. And then they discovered that, yes, we have the FRSC now. We can't just leave it as regulars. Of course, we may not have enough personnel. There must be another arm of it. And that is why the act that established the Federal Road Safety in Section 2, Sub 10, said that there shall be a commission known as the Federal Road Safety Corps, comprising of regulars, who are the uniform personnel, and the special marshals, who are the volunteers. Now, these two aspects forms what we call Federal Road Safety Corps. And you will agree with me, for those of you that moves around FCT and its environs, that this is not alien to Nigerians, to the people that live in FCT, almost everywhere. At a time, we're almost having much more than those who are actually employed to take the money there. So we are driven by what we see around us. And that we see around us also has also moved us to say, look, we need to give back. Like she has said, give back to the society. And this is one way we can do it. And also, let me add this quickly. Now, in Nigeria today, everybody is a big man. Everybody, that is what we see around us. Now, a man who is a retired general or a colonel sees a regular officer with 2-star or 1-star on the road, and he's trying to control traffic, trying to direct him on what to do and how to go about it. And he said, look, I will pull your uniform out of it. I will pull this. But myself today, I may be a director, I may be a permanent secretary, I may be a former minister, or even a retired general too, who of course has volunteered to serve under the Federal Road Safety Special Marshal. You coming there may not be able to identify me by who I am in the society. So they take redress. They get themselves organized and then respond to them as these directives are being given. And that has actually helped in ensuring that we have a safe motoring public.
Adaji, yes. While we are still on traffic management, yes, particularly congestion, yes, give us a sense of how you feel as a volunteer, yeah, when you get on the beat, considering the kind of rage that we have on our roads, and just the gruesome discipline. Yes. So what encourages you, what discourages you?
Yeah, a lot of, in fact, talking about discouragement would have been out of fit for now if the passion has not been there, because you meet a whole lot of attitudes. Now, the point here is this. What we do basically that have been able to help us in ensuring that we manage the people's attitude, because it's about the attitude now that we'll talk about the range on the roads. Because somebody who is moving between Katampe here to Kuba is doing a 120, 160, 180, and yet he's still on the phone and not on seatbelt and so on. So what we do is that we we do what we call public enlightenment. That has helped us a lot. We go to churches because we know that in the church, every morning, people go there and I'm sorry to use this word, they more or less worship the pastors and the reverends, because once they speak, it becomes law. They look at it as, yes, what God has said, so they follow them. So we go to them and then do this preaching, this public education in the churches, in the mosque, public places, in schools. We also do what we call catch them young. With the children now, when we go to secondary school, primary schools, we carry out this advocacy. You will see your child, Daddy, are you taking me to school? Please put on your seatbelt. That is a child of 6, 7 years telling the father. That means that we're already changing the people's attitude right from now. We may have failed as a generation, but we want generation after us to be able to key in into what is expected. So I think that has helped a lot in changing the people's psychic and attitude towards the use of Nigerian roads. And we have always told them, it is only the man that lives that tells the story.
Yeah, fine. I'm just saying, Lillian, I'm sorry. I'm saying something here. You get into some real traffic gridlock. And you, as a special marshal, everybody sees you in your uniform. You are giving instructions to motorists, and they're just typically stubborn or obstinate.
Yes.
What does that do to you?
Yeah. You see, it tells me that the man I am talking to needs to be properly educated, because you don't give what you don't have. It is not everybody that is educated that is, is sane. It's not everybody. So we have a whole lot of this, but that is why also in the Act there is room for enforcement. I keep telling people, road safety basically is not a revenue generation department. We are not bothered mostly about the enforcement aspect, but when we get people who are recalcitrant in nature, we try to bring that aspect that says enforce. And by the time you enforce, the man who wants to get to a particular point and has become very stupid on the road, so to speak. Now, by the time we bring him and we make him not to get to that destination, I'm sure tomorrow he will see better. We have even gone a little further. We tell somebody, now you have, this is traffic light, and then you see the traffic light red, and then you are going across it, something that we know right from cradle. Now, what do? We don't just enforce by booking, give you a ticket. It's okay, this man, I think you need some emotional evaluation. Are you really sane? The doctor should be able to tell us, are you under influence? Is something wrong somewhere? Have your wife annoyed you in the house, or you have a problem with your landlord or something? We need to examine this. And this has proven over time that a lot of persons drive under influence. This result has come time without number. And such people, we try to manage them. I think so far so good. These are things we do, and it's really getting down into the people.
Let me bring in Rotarian Abdullahi Idris. Kingsley asked the question earlier on, and I'd like for you to really, make the demarcation for us. You've listened to the Special Marshal talk about volunteerism. Now, most of what we know here in Nigeria are charity works, philanthropy, people doing humanitarian. Where is the line between charity work and volunteerism?
No, like I said earlier, charity works are sort of, should I say, activities which are undertaken to ensure certain needs are met. Let me put it so simple. The volunteerism has to do with the amount of time, amount of resources that are put or that are given. It's just like, for example, you plant a tree that you would never get to benefit from its fruits. The man who has planted that tree may have moved on, but you have the tree now nurturing itself by nature and eventually bears fruits, and people get to enjoy such fruits. Volunteerism actually, it's the, should I say, the tool or the mechanism that drives charity work. Because if you don't have volunteers, whatever a charity organization wants to do will never get done. That was why I used the phrase which we use in Rotary to say it profit those who serve best. For us in Rotary, your volunteerism actually ends by the time you get to become a member. Because at that point, you get to evaluate what you're coming into, what you get to understand what the organization is about. And it's such that we have a lot of partners, we have a lot of members who give in their resources who give in their skills in most cases and also get to also partake in the execution of programs. So it's basically the volunteerism there has to do with that time and the effort you put in trying to ensure your charities or your resources get put to the right places. Because you can't do without the two sides. That's just the truth. They go pari passu, as in hand in hand. One complements the other. So without you having volunteers or have those who can really volunteer their time and efforts to see to something being done, nothing gets done.
Yes. Lillian, tell us about your experience as a volunteer. What do you do and what have you done?
Okay. Like, I think I've done much in terms of volunteerism. Like Suicide Prevention Day, there was a road walk because of the suicide rates. That one is very volunteerism. When you look at the country, look at what is happening, people are committing suicides, for instance. Just maybe probably because of financial situations and so many things. So I took it upon myself that we need to sensitize the people on the issue of suicide prevention. So a whole lot has been done. The foundation have really put in so many activities. We'll go to the IDP camps. When you look at the internal displaced persons, what they are passing through, you need to talk to these people. We'll talk about child abuse, sensitization on rape, so many things, because all this goes hand in hand. Volunteerism, like he said earlier, goes hand in hand with charity.
Why do we have less Nigerians volunteering to render services, pro bono services?
Basically, I think the youths are the object of volunteerism. The youths have drive, they have motivation. But with our economic situation, these youths don't have much to do. So the Nigerian, for instance, we need to empower these people. We need to empower the youths. Like earlier, I overheard when they were discussing outside that these youths, nobody wants to volunteer. They don't want to do anything useful now because everybody wants money. So I think Nigerians, we need to curb the issue of financial aspects. Come out and volunteer.
So what do you volunteer if you need to be empowered? Are you volunteering? Is it money or what? So what do you volunteer?
I'm just wondering, Claire, that's a very important point that you have raised and to which Lillian, has attempted a response. Maybe I want to go back to the Rotarian before the engineer comes in. What are those predisposing factors or conditions to volunteerism? Now, if people are under pressure, economic pressure, and we said time value concept of money, and the Holy Book says that a laborer is worthy of his wages. So, what are those predisposing factors that would energize people to say, listen, I have to put in my time, I have to put in my effort for this cause for which I expect no recompense?
Yeah, that is where, like what she touched earlier, the issue of passion. Passion is something which you cannot quantify in terms of monetary values or return. Where you have that passion or drive to see that you achieve certain things is just, for example, you set a goal for yourself. And irrespective of whatever challenges, whatever problems you encounter, you'll still go at it. For example, I want to use the polio efforts as an example for us, which is one of our, or should I say, key project for Rotary. You identify a challenge, which in very fact, a lot of kids get sick at very, very tender age and not having the means to do whatever they need to do. You also have the issues of security challenges. You have the issue of enlightenment, which I think it's one major thing that volunteers or volunteerism needs. Because a lot of people need to be educated enough to understand why we need to volunteer. For polio, for example, we as Rotarians and donors and partners had to come up with a whole lot of strategy, because you had an insight where a lot of people will say when you immunize, it's makes a child maybe at an older age not to be able to conceive, not to be able to, and so a whole lot of misconception to it. And we had to develop a program of action where educating the populace comes in, especially parents, religious places where we know you have both parents, you have their kids, and you have also those who make impact, just like the engineer said, in terms of impacting on people in the religious places. And we had to give our time to ensuring during the polio rounds, ensure we go with the volunteer field workers, which are basically from the primary health sector. We made out our time to go with them. They would not be able to educate the populace as to why and all. But because we are coming from a more informed side and with better understanding and possibly a better level of interaction, we find ourselves being able to convince and talk to people to do things the way they should do it and why they need to do it. Because whether we like it or not, if we let it persist, is the future that is at stake and the future of this country and every other place, and that is how such matters were addressed. You know, so enlightenment plays a very big role. Where people don't understand why they should, they would never give to it. Because whether you like it or not, it's just like they say, don't throw stone in a marketplace. If you need to address something for sake of the future, you make out your time to do that. He spoke of roads. Say, for example, I live in a community where it's filled up with potholes, maybe ungraded road and all that. And I know at every point in time I drive that road, I get to fix my car. What would it take me to organize my neighbors or community men and so for us to go out, fill those potholes and enjoy the drive?
Okay, Nathan, you've listened to him, and of course, what drives his passion for volunteerism. How would you evaluate our volunteer culture?
Here is a little bit difficult to pierce through the heart of a person to do the right thing. What I mean is that, as a blood donor, I know what I pass through every blessed day. And anytime I get to donate, not at the center, but people that sees me as a blood donor. Do you mean that you just jump onto the cloth and the syringe is inside you, in the next 45 minutes you get a pint and you have not been paid? You don't collect anything, or are they feeding you? What is it? I remember some time ago, people were thinking that I'm a son of a minister. I said, somebody called, it was a call program. I said, I don't think that guy is, there's nothing that is disturbing him. He's well fed, he's okay. He's a big man child, so he can do whatever. You check very well. It's a car brought him there. But by the grace of God, it's something that none of my family members have ever received blood before. But I think that I have that willingness and that passion to see somebody like me. You see a breastfeeding or a pregnant woman giving birth, or an accident victim or crisis, something like that happening, and the only resources or what will bring the person back to life is a pint of blood. And a pregnant woman giving birth after some minutes, going into bleeding and all those stuff. I look at myself, this is what I can do without money. This is what I can do without stressing myself. This is what I can do just for me to accept the fact that with a pint of blood, this person will be back to life. Or to that phase aid, that emergency will be handled very well. So I pick that as a drive to myself, that I want this person to be like me, stand on his feet and can talk, not lying down restless or lifeless.
I was just wondering, the significance of what Nathan John has done and is perhaps still doing should not be understated at all. Donating blood 61 times, it's, as has been said, said to be a record. We do know there were reports in the past of commercial blood donors. Now, he's a voluntary blood donor. Around the Keja roundabout near the hospital, you find people who are milling around, and usually when a patient needs blood transfusion and the blood bank is empty or there is no match, the relatives of the patients are usually advised, to go around Ikeja roundabout. In the vicinity, you will find persons, who are willing to donate blood, but you pay for it. So in this case, this is a voluntary action, and it's to be commended. I want to bring in, I wanted to bring in Adaji again. On the factors that can predispose an individual to engage in volunteer work. But I want to rephrase that and say, does corruption act as a disincentive to volunteerism?
That's exactly, I am glad you asked this question, because while he was speaking, I was also going through that aspect, trying to marry what he was trying to say with the issue of volunteerism, charity, and so on. Because now, for instance, how are we sure that the 61 times he has donated was also given to the needy without a pay? That's one question. Because it's one thing for you to donate at a blood bank. It's another thing, again, for it to be used judiciously. Often at times you go to the hospital and you see somebody dying, and they said, please, we need to buy pints of blood. How much? They say 10,000, 15,000. From the same hospital, the same place, you need to pay to buy. And maybe this person doesn't have money. Maybe somebody has assisted and rushed the patients down to the hospital, and they need to transmit blood, and they need that person to pay without a dime. This does happen. So I think at that point now, the issue of those who stands as volunteers to ensure that what has been donated willingly is also seen that it is taken, cascaded down to the last person, is also very, the beneficiary is also very paramount. I would want to speak on this, commercializing God's gift. I don't know where our religious mind is anyway in Nigeria, because we go to church a lot and go to the mosque a lot. But I think what we do behind closed door is only God that knows how to reward that, either negatively or positively. But for me, honestly speaking, I think what Nathan is doing is just the best that ought to be done by anybody. And the only way this can be encouraged, if I may say, we know that when you volunteer, you are expecting nothing in return, but you can be given a pat at the back. Once that is done, I'm sure a lot of persons will also be willing to tail the line of Nathan if government also comes in to encourage such donors. We do it in the FRSC. I have units that once in a while, because ours is beyond what you see on the road, we do community services too. We do community services, we go for blood donations, all things we think that we can do to save life, because ours is about safety, saving life, and that is everybody's business, irrespective of what you do, who you are, and where you are. Most times we pick units, because I have almost about up to 40 units under me today in FCT, from Abaji down to Nyanya and Nisambaro. A unit or two could go out to the blood bank and then say about 3-4 persons goes there, they donate blood. Intermittently, you could find out we do this a lot. And we also look around also within the community where we belong to and say, what is it that is a problem around there? Aside the issue of traffic control, we also go out there to do that. Now, what will happen? We go to the road, we have saved life. We want to save life. There's an accident, and then this person has lost so much blood, and you are taking this person to the hospital. You are the one bringing this person, and at that point, they said he needs blood. And here you are, having the same blood group. You have been screened, and you are qualified. Why not donate the same blood? So you can see that it goes beyond just standing on the road and saying, we want to do traffic controls and so on. But much like I know, we need to do more in terms of encouraging volunteerism. She talked about something which we also queried a little, the issue of empowering. Now, when we talk about empowering people to be able to volunteer, it is not all about money. Now, you see somebody on the street. Okay, for instance, let us assume that Nathan is not employed. By assumption, he has volunteered so many times to donate blood. Now, this man needs to feed well. He needs to be up and doing. He needs to be good to be able to continue with this strive. If the government offers him a job, they have empowered him. But that also will now encourage him more to donate willingly like he has always done. Okay, so it is not that when we say empower, it's not that please go and give these people money to go and volunteer. No, but then there are so many ways you can encourage somebody who has put in so much lot. I will give you one particular instance with the road safety. We come to the road, a lot of people are unaware of the establishment of the special marshals. And then you come to the road and a uniformed personnel sees you, a policeman or a military man, and says, look, jobless people, that is why you don't have anything to do, and then you are here wasting your time and disturbing us. Please get out of the road. Before you know it, some could even arrange with the police and whatever. Nobody is above the law. And say, look, bundle these people to the police station. And then you are all rounded up and taken. This has happened. In fact, there was even a recent one that they said, look, take them to court, imprison them immediately. And we said, no, this cannot happen because we also have our people. I have sons, over 10 to 15 sons now who are members of the special marshals. I have judges. I have lawyers, medical doctors. In fact, as a matter of fact, I have a unit called the medical unit in FCT. There are not less than two doctors from all the government hospitals in FCT today are members of that. Now, what do? What they do is that sometimes we organize programs and then go out for eye check. If the major's in that, go out to test our bloods, BP, do this, do that, because that is their field. So we use them under the guise of the special marshals, the FRSC, to carry out this. So you can see that it's all encompassing. It's more broad than we see us on the street. So we try to tell Nigerians when we have opportunities like this, that see these people as people who have come out to assist, to serve, to complement the effort of this, and not enemies, and not those who have come to probably fight or who are jobless.
Yeah. Claire, it's fine. The explanation is noted. I want to ask that question again as to whether corruption can act as a disincentive. And this is one context in which that question might be answered.
Yes.
You have special events, special occasions. We have Olympics, for instance. There is no one city that has hosted the Olympics and employed all the hands, for a fee while the games last, before the games and so on. Sometimes you have thousands of volunteers, who get in there. We've also had special events in our own country. We've hosted events in the past, but people will tell you at the end of the day, you are hearing that some figures were voted. People nobody gave us this one, even to give us water. I mean, you felt like you were a volunteer, doesn't mean that you will not drink water. They didn't give us water, and we heard that they arranged for 100 persons, 100 ushers. Now 50 of us came, we were volunteers. We don't know what happened later. Does this serve as a disincentive? And therefore, what do we need to avoid in terms of our attitudes in order to further encourage volunteerism?
Yeah, like I said earlier, education is key when you volunteer. And that's why you have a lot of, should I say, NGOs or well-organized service organizations having a defined structure of how things are done, be it their governance principles, be it financial standards and all. And they ensure such issues are addressed. When you come in terms of working with, should I say, public agencies and all that, and a volunteer organization, there are two big differences. In the sense that the structure aren't the same. They are not. So you have those who actually do these things for their benefits and all, but the long run is you intend to touch communities or individuals. So you try as much as you can to ensure that the issues of corruption or self-benefits and all that do not play out. Because in the long run, it's the name of such organizations or that outfit you're promoting that counts. And that is why, should I say, that principles needs to be upheld of most high importance. Corruption, one, in the society where we are today, you cannot completely set it aside. And that is why you need to have people who are well informed and are well cultured to join organizations and ensure they drive the vision of such outfits. I want to use Rotary again as an example, in the sense that we have donors, for example, who support projects we do in Nigeria, either through our clubs or districts, for example. whenever such clubs abroad or even outside the shores of FCT, for example, let's say Lagos, a joint project wants to be undertaken with our own district because we're different, and a club is a beneficiary of such projects. They ensure the district governor and the club presidents are informed. The financial contributions in terms of the partnership is defined. An account is opened. At the conclusion, successful execution of such projects, they render accounts, and the said account is knocked off in the sense that it must end with a zero balance at the end of the day based on what has been programmed or estimated to engulf such projects. So we try to see how, one, integrity is maintained in terms of the name of the outfit, and three, the service is delivered, or two, the service is delivered. So where you have integrity at the back of your mind, even as an individual, you stand to protect your name, and you stand to do what the society wants to see in you.
All right, Kingsley. Yes, I think we're just at the appropriate time for us to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll look at the other aspects of volunteerism. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and today we are looking at the Nigeria and, of course, volunteerism culture. Don't go away.
My name is Yemi Adetunji, the COO downstream of NNPC. Ever since the closure of the borders, we have seen a marked reduction, about 10%, in terms of the evacuation of what you call loadouts of PMS, which equates to about 6 million liters per day. Essentially because of the border closure, because of certain aspects we've also done as NNPC, working with our sister organizations, sister agencies, Nigerian Customs, DPR, Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources, and other agencies, and also what we call Operation White, which is an intervention we have put in place to trace and track every molecule of petroleum products as they arrive in country through the vessels, as they move through the depots, and as they are evacuated with trucks out of the depots.
Wash my hand from oil bunkering. General, what you gonna yarn? What did the yarn serve? I don't understand though. Because they spoil our water and our environment. And they cause our people serious harm. Militants is there. You know good. Me, I not do again Sam. Because why? Change begins with me. General
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, it's still Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We're discussing volunteerism, and we have a number of tweets that have come in from our viewers. Claire, let's go through those tweets and then return to our guests.
All right. Okay. Dele Jack Solomon says, truth be told, in Nigeria, it's rather a culture of nothing goes for nothing. Some people find it hard to give free services like other countries of the world. Plus, to create a culture of volunteerism, there is also a need to raise the profile of volunteers and voluntary work.
Now, Chris Simeon, government and civil society groups should not relent in promoting volunteerism. Young men and women should be enlightened on the essence of volunteerism because it speeds up economic and social development.
Akejo Lagbajo tweets, volunteering thrives when citizens appreciate civic duties, appreciate good governance, and in a corrupt-free environment. The youth population dynamic is an asset to promote volunteerism, both at community and national level, if enabling factors are created appropriately.
Ibrahim Modu Aji, Nigerians need to imbibe the culture of giving free services, especially in their immediate environment. We don't need to wait for outsiders to give us free services all the time. Develop your immediate environment and start volunteering today.
R4C Law Volunteerism is a critical aspect of social and economic development. Here in Nigeria, poor economy does not encourage people to embark on it.
Lily Jack Solomon will take this one again. It says, government and NGOs have a role to play in promoting volunteerism among young people. They can do so by promoting volunteerism in the education curriculum, developing specific programs to encourage young persons and systems to recognize and accredit volunteers.
And this is coming from Francis Obi. Very welcomed, and a lot of Nigerians embark on it without making noise. For example, of course, he's mentioning the FRSC, Parent Teachers Association, but if it can be formalized, a lot of people, can key into it.
Now, Emmanuel, it is obvious that volunteerism is an African core value, will favor Nigerians by giving them a cutting-edge philosophy about their community, and above all, increasing a sense of oneness beyond all other considerations.
And Titus Monday Knock tweets, Nigerians are known to care for people, but political intrigues involving money, emphasis, and get-rich-quick syndrome negates the inherent volunteerism in the Nigerian psyche. Most worrisome is how some religious entities or outfits have relegated volunteerism for profiteering. So sad.
All right, Claire, Francis Obi is already, we read one from him and Lily Jack Solomon as well.
Yes.
We've also read tweets from them.
Yes.
Well, I just wanted to ask, Lillian, from your experience, do you get discouraged sometimes? Do onlookers or indeed family members wonder, why are you spending so much time on this? You are getting to more productive ventures.
Thank you for that question. Like I still said, I still maintain the issue of passion. Most of the times we've gotten such, like, why are you even doing this? After all, you don't have anything to lose, you don't have anything to gain. But in a situation whereby you're going out on the street, for instance, and you see a child of 6 years that is supposed to be in school, hawking, that alone demoralizes me. I'll be like, what? Why is he on the street? This child is supposed to be in school. Because I have the passion. And coming out from a community where your parents strived so hard to train you in school, not that we had so much. So we need to give back to the society. In as much of, most times we'll get discouraged. The whole lot that at times you even wake up in the morning, you see people tweeting, maybe you want to do something, somebody is telling you, why are you doing it? Why do you want to do this? Why are you trying this because of sexual abuse? They will even go to the extent of threatening you. You better drop that case now or something happens to you. We've gotten such actions. Right. Yeah, but when you have the passion, you don't, because you know that child that is being molested, because he or she doesn't have someone who can speak for him. You need to champion that cause for he or she to get justice.
So my question would also be, how do you sustain this passion? Because it's not just volunteering your time. You also have, to, commit some other resources, So if, for instance, you are like Nathan, who says, look, I don't have any, godfather or strong backing behind me, how do you keep going?
It's like what the engineer said, it's probably God. Because I myself, I don't even have. There's no sponsor, there's no donor anywhere. But once in a while, you see like I said, everything is not all about resources.